My good friend Zoltan, distinguished authorities, it is a special pleasure and honor. I'm humbled to be here as part of this important program. I have to tell you, it's been a difficult journey from New York. As happens to many of us, the planes are very difficult, so I don't have my baggage. And so if you see me in short pants, it's not a new fashion statement. What can I say? But at least they're black pants. At least they're black pants. But I have to say a couple of words. My good friends offered me everything. Roberto offered me his clothes. Azim Koryak gave me the shirt off his back. And in true Hungarian hospitality, my friend Xander literally gave me his jacket and tie so I look half presentable. So thank you all, and it's a true privilege to be here. I wouldn't miss this for anything. Now, what I want to do with you this morning, and I'll do my best to stay on time. Zoltan is tough. He's encouraged me to stay on time, is to discuss the concept why the Semmelweis story is a victory of integrity over pride. I have no conflicts, I assure you. Please, this group knows more than me the story of Ignaz Semmelweis. Hand washing between patients has become such an integral part of modern obstetrics that failure to wash one's hands is unthinkable in professional organizational culture. We're all committed to patient safety and quality of care. The sad truth is, especially in America, many obstetricians do not know who pioneered this fundamental component of patients' safety and the resistance that he encountered. It's a sad but beautiful story. The hypothesis that the transfer of putrid matter from the hands of physicians and medical students to gravid patients cause puerperal fever was articulated before Semmelweis, as early as 1795 by the Scottish physician Alexander Gordon. So he was not the first to verbalize this. And this was supported by a very prominent American physician, Oliver Wendell Holmes. Semmelweis was the first, however, to test this hypothesis in a clinical trial that proved the hypothesis. His success in proving this hypothesis is an exemplar of evidence-based medicine long before we use that term. Long before this became the global standard, Semmelweis pioneered this. Here we see where he worked in Austria, in his ward, and this is the classic image we've already seen. This very, very simple intervention that saved lives. I've heard the statistics, whether it's 1 out of 4 women died or 1 out of 6 women died due to puerperal sepsis. You know the history, but let's talk a little bit. How did this happen? How did this happen? This dramatic reduction in infection and maternal death that resulted from Semmelweis' clinical research was remarkable and should have been convincing. Any intelligent person accept it. The remarkable remedy of hand washing should have been met with acclaim and rapid, widespread adoption. That's what should have happened. This is especially the case when the change in behavior is so simple and so low cost. Money wasn't involved here. Instead, resistance and ridicule occurred. I want to mention Rudolf Virchow, a name that I think everyone in this room knows, the father of infectious disease. It's a picture you may have seen. When Semmelweis presented the results of his clinical investigation to the Medical Society of Vienna in 1850, Rudolf Virchow responded with ridicule. This august figure. Same in America. Charles Meigs was a prominent American obstetrician, I'm ashamed to say he was a professor where I went to medical school, Jefferson Medical College in Philadelphia. And his statement is a classic that we all should remember. This is this distinguished American professor. Remember these words: doctors are gentlemen, and gentlemen hands are clean. How could anyone contest that doctors were not gentlemen? And this was the sentiment that was throughout. Worse than ridicule occurred. I think everyone in this room knows the sad story. He lost his position in Vienna. He returned not to Budapest. At that time it was Pest. He was reduced to poverty and died from injuries in the asylum in Vienna. Now, I wondered, how the heck could this possibly occur? Because people were not stupid, Rudolf Virchow and the other scientists at the time. I had a discussion with a professor, Professor Laszlo Maradi, and I love history, but he taught me something about history that I wasn't so familiar with. Right around this time, there was a fierce and bitter fight between Austria and Hungary. It was the time of the revolution. And Semmelweis straddled both. He was Hungarian, but he did his work in Austria. So the Austrians regarded him with contempt because he was Hungarian. The Hungarians regarded him with contempt because he studied in Austria. And here we see how national politics, it's very likely, was a good part of the reason why he was marginalized and discredited. I'm very proud to work with Azam Kuryak, Zoltan Pap, Roberto Romero, and so many others of you in this room with our international societies, where we have a brotherhood and sisterhood, and national politics cannot enter into this, otherwise we have disasters, what happened to Semmelweis. Let's talk a little bit about, could this have been prevented and how to prevent this? It's easy to look back in shock at this history and take satisfaction this couldn't happen in 21st century, we would know better. But it's risky to judge the past by contemporary standards because those standards may not have existed in the past. From a historical perspective, the question becomes, were there resources in the culture that should have produced a different response? And the answer is yes. There were resources. Had they followed these resources, the tragic outcome for Semmelweis and the many, many women who died could have been prevented. And the pioneer in professionalism, John Gregory from Scotland, is what I'm talking about here. The Scottish physician ethicist, John Gregory, not Hippocrates, created professional medical ethics and the profession of medicine. And this was translated in languages throughout the world, including America. This formed the basis of our AMA Code of Ethics. Among Gregory's students at the University of Edinburgh, where he presented his lectures, there were students from all over the continents of Europe who would bring their ideas home, including here, Austria and Hungary. He created medical ethics and the profession of medicine. He articulated what it means to be a professional. I emphasize, for centuries, medicine was a guild. It was Gregory who said that the physician must become and remain scientifically and clinically competent, protect and promote the health-related interests of the patient first. It's fine to make money, but the patient must come first. A radical concept in class-structured 18th century Great Britain. Gregory understood that proper character formation, the cultivation of intellectual and moral virtues, was essential to making these commitments. And by virtues, I don't mean something superficial or ethereal. I mean that they focus us to turn away from oneself and that we can accept responsibility. And these are essential so we can abide by these commitments. Gregory addressed these topics that we're very familiar with: maintaining confidentiality of information for patients, honest communication of bad news to seriously ill patients, radical concepts in 18th century Great Britain, management of patients with nervous disorders, who were also now known as the worried well, and he navigated between tensions between medicine and surgery. I want to emphasize Gregory made the virtue of candor a cornerstone of professional medical ethics. We don't use the word candor so much today. It's replaced by professional integrity. So important. And I quote from Gregory: "I may reckon among the moral duties incumbent on a physician the candor that makes him open to conviction and ready to acknowledge and rectify his mistakes. An obstinate adherence to an unsuccessful method of treating a disease must be owing to a high degree of self-conceit and a belief of the infallibility of a system. This error is more difficult to cure as it generally proceeds from ignorance." What a beautiful elucidation of what went on with Ignaz Semmelweis. True knowledge and clear discernment may lead one into the extreme of diffidence and humility, but are inconsistent with self-deceit. It sometimes happens, too, that this obstinacy proceeds from a defect in heart. Such physicians see that they're wrong, but they're too proud to acknowledge their error, especially if it's pointed out by someone in their profession who they don't like or may be inferior. To this species of pride, a pride incompatible with true dignity and the elevation of minds, have the lives of thousands been sacrificed. And this exactly is what happened to Ignaz Semmelweis and many, many women. Conviction means that the physician should be open to becoming convinced, accepting evidence. Candor, the professional virtue of integrity, promotes true knowledge and discernment and becomes the powerful antidote to self-conceit, pride, and a defect in heart. I love this picture, which is in the Royal College in Great Britain, because it shows the ideal obstetrician. On one side in blue is the obstetrician with the scientific advance at the time. No cesarean delivery, the Chamberlain forceps. On the other side, melded and brought together with the compassion of a midwife. And this is what we need: science brought together with the virtues that we've discussed. Gregory's professional ethics was available to our American MIGs and the European virtue, but they ignored it. And the professional virtue of candor provides the basis for forming the historical hypothesis of why Semmelweis's critics reacted as they did. They suffered from a cascade of intellectual and moral failures that violated candor. Semmelweis's critics were trapped in obstinate adherence to an unsuccessful method, the belief that being a gentleman in and of itself prevents puerperal disease. And that comment we should all remember. Semmelweis critics had a high degree of self-conceit that they were right and the upstart Semmelweis could not be right. They had a belief in the infallibility of their system. For Gregory, a system meant an elaboration of diseases and their connections with no evidence to support the evidence. Medicine based on such symptoms is unscientific. The result of these cascades of intellectual and moral failure was self-conceit, what we call today a normalization of deviance. It sometimes happens on our labor and delivery wards. The result was overwhelming arrogance or hubris. Very briefly, and I'll stay on time, the ultimate legacy Semmelweis won, not in the short time. He himself suffered and died penniless, but his legacy is clear. The hubris of Semmelweis critics led to a victory of raw pride over professional integrity at the complete unnecessary peril of thousands of mothers. The outcome should not have been tolerated by obstetrician and especially the leaders, the European Virchow, the American MIGs. Raw pride is incompatible with the professional virtue of integrity and therefore incompatible with a professional organizational culture of safety and quality. The ultimate victory of integrity over raw pride has become Semmelweis's timeless legacy. And the previous speakers have shown this so well with the coins, with the stamps, and the statues, where Semmelweis is a timeless figure, not the Virchow and MIGs who are cast aside. Here's just one of the statues. Previous speakers have shown many more beautiful statues. This one is from Chicago in a place called the Hall of Heroes. And indeed, Semmelweis must be considered a hero in medicine. I'll close with two quotes, and Zoltan, I will stay on time. The great American Benjamin Franklin has said, "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." If anyone has ever shown this to be so true, it's Ignaz Semmelweis. The simple, low-cost intervention has saved thousands, millions of lives throughout the world. And I'll close with something, whatever your religious belief, I think this is transcendent to all of us. Whoever saves a single life, it's considered as he saved the entire world. And I would suggest Semmelweis is indeed a hero because he saved not one, but so many mothers who would have died unnecessarily. Zoltan, thank you for the privilege, and please forgive my appearance. Thank you so much.